India is a world full of divisive powers trumpeting their own chorus. India is voicing the concerns of developing countries and members of the global south. However, just like Arjun in Mahabharata, India must accomplish its objectives without being deterred by which its partners stand in the way. There is one line in geopolitics that beautifully captures the soul of this dynamic trait. There is no permanent friend or permanent enemy when it comes to geopolitics. Keeping this pragmatic and only truth of diplomacy in mind, India is navigating through the incorrigible differences of two varying factions and pursuing its national interests. At a time when smaller voiceless nations around the world are placing their hopes on the Indian G20 Presidency, it is imperative to examine how India is conducting its diplomacy. The latest remarks by Prime Minister Modi give a clear signal that India will not let any player compromise its G20 presidency. It will focus on bringing tangible benefits to the world during its presidency. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Savita Mishra and this is TFIPost. Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently addressed the meetings of the foreign ministers of G20 via video conference. In his address, he explained the rationale behind choosing the theme One Earth, One Family and One Future for India's G20 presidency. He stated that the theme signals the need for unity of purpose as well as a unity of action. PM expressed his belief that the foreign ministers' meeting would reflect the spirit of togetherness to achieve the common and concrete objectives. He chastised multilateral forums like the United Nations for completely failing on both of its mandates. In a strongly worded criticism, PM Modi said, I quote, "We must all acknowledge that multilateralism is in crisis today." He explained that there were two objectives for creating an architecture of global governance after the Second World War. First, it was to prevent future wars, and second, to develop international cooperation. On both these accounts, the UN and the multilateral organizations have completely failed, leaving the smaller and developing countries to their own peril. PM Modi stressed that the financial crisis, climate change, pandemic, terrorism, and wars of recent years are clear indicators of the gross failure of the global governance. The world has paid a heavy price because of the failures of this architecture of global governance. He further remarked that it is important to acknowledge that developing nations are bearing the brunt of these failures. There is a great risk that years of progress made towards achieving sustainable development goals will be in danger. It is noteworthy that Prime Minister Modi is the only major world leader who has been repeatedly calling out and chastising wealthy nations without hampering the growth trajectory of the strategic ties with these nations. It is a fact that the US and other Western nations are guilty of committing crimes against the environment and polluting it. Rather than taking responsibilities for their sins, they have been castigating developing nations. But PM Modi in his address minced no word and highlighted this fact. He remarked that developing nations are most affected by global warming caused by richer countries. PM Modi reiterated that India will keep striving to achieve progress on issues of common interest and become the voice for the global south. While hitting at the fractured and incompetent multilateralism, he highlighted the vision of India's presidency of the grouping. PM remarked that India's G20 presidency has tried to give a voice to the global south. Attacking UN-like nations, he added that no group can claim global leadership without listening to those affected by its decisions. He said, I quote, "The world looks upon the G20 to ease the challenges of growth, development, economic resilience, disaster resilience, financial stability, transnational crime, corruption, terrorism, and food and energy security." Now there are two things simultaneously at play. Some nations, particularly Western nations, are trying to compromise India's G20 presidency. They want to limit it to only being a platform to criticize and lambast Russia. While some nations like Japan are pursuing their national interests and issuing anti-Russia statements and registering their concerns without undermining India's presidency. Some quarters are peddling agendas and rumors on an aggravated rift between the G7 nations and the G20 groupings. Several foreign ministers decided to skip the customary family photo of all foreign ministers of the G20 countries. Through this, they displayed their anger against India amid the ongoing Ukraine conflict and increasing differences between the G7 countries and Russia. Similarly, France and a few other nations warned through official and unofficial channels that they would not sign the G20 communique if it didn't openly criticize Russia for the Ukraine crisis. There are few instances that highlight their genuine concerns and statements driven by national interests. For example, France and Germany nudged India to speak out against Russian aggression. Italian PM Giorgia Meloni recently reiterated the concerns of the West during her India visit. Taking cue from Dr. Jaishankar's famous remark, she said, "Unfortunately, Europe's problems are becoming the world's problem." The Western Bloc has been using pressure tactics like skipping family photo to nudge India into speaking out against Russia. Even PM Modi highlighted that there are some genuine concerns of the Western nations. He underlined that the current meetings are taking place at a time of deep global divisions. So it is only natural for foreign ministers' discussions to be affected by the geopolitical tensions of the day. He also added that every nation has its own positions and perspectives on how these tensions should be resolved. However, it can't be denied that there are unknown hands at play that are badly rattled by India's growing global clout. They are upset that India is becoming the voice of the global south and other unrepresented countries at the global level. For this, they are using every dirty trick in the book to undermine India's G20 presidency, including planting baseless reports, rumors, and fake news. A few days earlier, there was a planted rumor doing the rounds in the social media. It was claimed that the Japanese foreign minister will skip the G20 meeting and his deputy will attend the meeting. It was claimed that it was an arm-twisting maneuver by the Japanese. Reports claim that India's G20 presidency is feeling the heat for not openly discussing and criticizing the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Some termed India's move as naive. However, such fake news died down its own excruciating death. The Japanese foreign minister quelled all these rumors by attending the G20 meeting in person. Going a step further, as the president of the G7 grouping this year, he even extended the support of the entire G7 nations to India's G20 presidency. He said, I'm quoting, 2023 is a crucial year as Japan chairs the G7 and India chairs the G20. As the premier forum for international economic cooperation, the G20 is of paramount importance for responding effectively to issues facing the international community such as food security and development. He also lauded India's leadership, particularly for voicing concerns about the global south. The Japanese foreign minister added, I quote, given India's outstanding leadership, including its hosting of the Voice of the Global South Summit in January, coordination with India is now even more vital. Japan looks forward to working hand in hand with India to lead responses to global challenges. In his address at the G20 foreign ministers meeting, PM Modi also gave a clear roadmap on what should be the priorities of India as the president of the grouping. He remarked that the G20 has the capacity to build consensus and deliver concrete results in many key areas. For this, he categorically underlined that the focus should be on not letting divisive issues get in the way of other issues of global good that have a common understanding. PM Modi said, I quote, we should not allow issues that we cannot resolve together to come in the way of those we can. Pressing the importance of Indian civilization, PM Modi urged their excellencies to draw inspiration from India's civilizational ethos and focus on things that unify us rather than those that divide us. Raising the debt crisis of several nations, PM Modi said, I quote, the G20 has a critical role to play in finding the right balance between growth and efficiency on the one hand and resilience on the other. All in all, PM Modi has made it absolutely clear that India will not let any power meddle with India's G20 presidency and its future is safe and sound. However, it does have to take proper measures to first quell the genuine concerns of several nations and not let G20 become the boxing arena for G7 members and Russia. Second, it has to fight against the rumor-mongering and pressure tactics of other nations to coerce India's stance on the Russia-Ukraine crisis and give their vending a place in the G20 communique. Rather than diverting too much attention to Europe's problem, India will keep striking unanimous agreements with the G20, just like it did with France ministers meeting on debt management. India will take a stance in a way that best suits our national interest and show a mirror to the West on issues where they have been committing sins for centuries.